I'm Julie West, and I'm here today to share my story of losing my son to sudden cardiac arrest on the football field. I received a call from one of Jake's coaches telling me that something happened to Jake at football practice. By the time I arrived, he was already in the ambulance, and I do remember running across the field trying to get to Jake, and they wouldn't let me in the ambulance, so I still didn't know what was going on. And the next thing I know, the police are escorting me to the hospital, and that's when I'm finding out that Jake went into sudden cardiac arrest. The AED was not nearby the field, and it was in the coach's office. They worked on my son for the longest time in the emergency room, but unfortunately they weren't able to save my son.
In 2017, my wife Kristen was 29 years old, and she came to me and said that she had some chest pain and some tingling in her fingers. But, 29 years old, healthy, active, no apparent risk factors for any type of heart issues, so we just kind of attributed it to anxiety and thought, well, why don't you just relax and take a break, see if you feel any better. I ended up leaving the room briefly, maybe 10 seconds, 12 seconds, and came back and had found her collapsed down on our bed. At that point, it was the surreal moment of something's really wrong here. I need to call 911. And so about 6 minutes and 30 seconds of CPR before the fire department came in and had an AED available. So they let it analyze her, and it determined that she needed a shock to get her heart back in rhythm. After that, she was in the hypothermic state for 3 days. The nurses and doctors didn't really seem too optimistic. It's not very common that someone who has a sudden cardiac arrest at home or that's unwitnessed survives. By the end of the third day, they had taken her off of the ventilator. She was breathing better on her own, and she started looking around and mouthing words and recognizing me. And still a really long, slow process, but her recovery improved each day.
After that, it was our mission to figure out why my son collapsed, and then we found out he was born with an undetected heart condition called ARVC. It took no time for my family to sit down and say, okay, this is not right. We need to figure out what we can do to save other families from feeling what we are feeling. So that's when we started a nonprofit foundation, the Play for Jake Foundation. To this day, when I see some of Jake's teammates or coaches, they still get emotional. I still get emotional, and that was back in 2013. So I know they did everything they possibly knew what to do to try to save Jake's life, but they were not prepared for that. And that's why these cardiac emergency response plans are so important, because if we don't practice, you just don't know. You're not going to be comfortable with it. We know that if someone goes into sudden cardiac arrest and there's an AED readily available, that life can possibly be saved. And so that's been our mission. I've been a school teacher for 26 years. I knew how to protect children in a fire, a tornado, active shooter drill, but we were never taught what to do if someone goes into sudden cardiac arrest, and that is the key right there. I mean, you can have an AED, but if nobody knows where it is and they don't know to grab it, and someone suffers sudden cardiac arrest, that person could die right there in the hallway or on the field. I think that's why the education piece is so important in our schools, because we don't want people just to be a bystander. We want them to be a lifesaver.
I didn't know anything about sudden cardiac arrest before this happened. So this experience, we kind of feel an obligation to tell our story and to bring it to people's attention so they can think through it and they can know that this is a possibility, that it could happen to them, it could happen to somebody that they love, and this is the outcome if you can be prepared for it. And if you can have an AED close and used within a few minutes, people can survive this. They don't have to die. And it's really caused a lot of changes in our life, and try not to take things for granted anymore and really appreciate the future that we have and the little moments that are possible now because of CPR and AED.
My hope and my message is that the risk is real and the solution is simple.
When something like this happens, you don't want to have any regrets. What could I have done better? What should I have done better? By practicing these things, we're going to have a lot less regrets and a lot more success in saving people's lives.